Deshaun Watson, Cleveland. This asshole had to really make us re-record this whole segment. We had an old segment talking about he was either going to Atlanta or New Orleans. Dude, fake fucking news. Because I thought Cleveland was out. Cleveland's back in, and they wound up landing a superstar quarterback. Cleveland finally has a franchise quarterback, Max. What the hell is going on in the world these days?
Didn't they pass on him in the draft twice? Or was it one
Twice.
time?
No, I think twice. Yeah, for Myles Garrett.
No, they passed on him. They took Garrett, I think is what they did. They took Garrett, and then they passed
Denzel
on
Ward.
him. No, that was the year after. But basically,
okay.
Cleveland rights the wrong. They get their guy. It was a huge trade, a superstar-ish trade. And it's a guy who hasn't played football in a year, and he got a bag to go with it. Do you want to get into the details first, and then we'll break down the trade? For those of you watching, you can see on the screen the trade, but for the audio listeners, Cleveland gets Deshaun Watson, and they give the Texans 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fifth-round pick, Juan.
Wow. Dude, like, what the hell is the NFL turning into, bro?
I guess the NBA.
It's
the
nuts.
NBA.
This is by far the craziest offseason ever. It's fucking insanity.
Not to mention when we saw a trade yesterday, your Raiders trade for Devontae Adams, and the price was a little low because, like we talked about, they had to pay him. Well, they paid Deshaun 5 years, $230 million, all guaranteed.
Oh,
he's gonna make
God.
$184 million the first 4 years of this contract, dude. Initial thoughts on the trade one. I just think it's a win-win. I don't think either team really, I don't think there's a loser. Maybe the loser is just the AFC in general, or maybe the NFC, because there's another good quarterback in the AFC. But for the Texans, this guy was never going to play for you again.
Right.
You were kind of at a disadvantage with your roster. You add a bunch of first-round picks to build around Davis Mills, who was surprisingly good as a rookie. And the Browns, they have a guy who, one, I think changes the culture, because whether you want to admit it or not, for all his faults and good, Baker Mayfield changed the culture of the Browns. They were bad last year, and they were 7-9. What has been bad for a Cleveland fan in the last 10 years? 2-4, 5-11, 2-14, excuse me. But you get what I mean. Baker did help this team. They're going to trade Baker probably with the Colts, from what everyone indicates. And I'm pretty sure the Browns are going to honor his trade request now they have Deshaun Watson. I'm just going to guess. Go out on a limb.
I mean, the first initial reaction, usually, in my opinion, the team that winds up getting the player wins the trade more often than not. But in this particular case, man, I feel like the Texans got a lot and I understand Deshaun Watson as the player, and you take out what has happened. I mean, yeah, they got a potential top 5 quarterback, franchise quarterback. But 3 first-round picks, and then to top it all off, this is not no regular contract we're used to seeing. This is fully guaranteed, Max. This is the first guaranteed contract ever in NFL history. I think besides what, Kirk Cousins?
Yeah,
but this
so
is
it's the second or the third. And Kirk Cousins, this is twice the money you got, bro. So obviously Kirk Cousins is the loser of this. Kirk Cousins' agent just got shat on. Deshaun Watson's agent, great job getting that bag for your boy.
What did Kirk Cousins get? Like $80 million?
$84 million for 3 years, and then they gave him another year fully guaranteed, and then they gave him another year. So I mean, he might get 150. But also, this is a guy, who, like I said, who hasn't played football in a year, Juan. And you just said they gave up a lot for him. We talked about it last night. We've always said draft picks are a little more special when they're draft picks. In 5 years, if I'm like, hey, here's what the trade was. Larry Ogunjobi, Xavier Rhodes, and I don't know who's a decent, like Colton Miller.
Yeah.
Who wins the trade?
Yeah, the guy who got the superstar.
The superstar quarterback. And those are 3 good players.
Right.
But it doesn't matter unless you get 3 superstars with those 3 first-round picks, which, let's be real, it's not likely. You're going to swing and miss more likely than not. But I just think it's a win-win because this guy was never going to suit up for you.
Yeah.
The Browns got their guy who can change the franchise. Dabo Sweeney said he was Michael Jordan coming out in the draft. And I think we've seen with Deshaun, Juan, it doesn't really matter how good the team is. He kind of gives them a chance to win.
No, most definitely. I mean, on the field, I mean, it works. You got Amari Cooper, who is still very talented, as much criticism as we give him. You got a top 5 running back. You got arguably the best offensive line in football. And the defense, hey, maybe on paper they're good and on the field they struggle, but they still have a top 3 pass rusher in the league in Myles Garrett. They have a superstar on defense at the end of the day and a great corner in Denzel Ward. So hopefully they can get it all together and figure it out on the defensive end. But as far as the team wise, out of all the teams that were on the table, who by my knowledge was Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, Cleveland, and I think that's it, right? I think those were really the 4 teams who were in
That
the
was it. And
mix.
Cleveland one was the first team that got dismissed initially, they said. And then it
Yeah.
was Carolina. And now he had a pick between Atlanta and the Saints. And then he goes back to Cleveland, which is odd. But like you said, when you laid it out, they have a good roster. And I think this move kind of propels them back to contention in the AFC North.
Loaded. They're loaded.
Baltimore, for as much as I like them, they have some holes. They have a quarterback question in Lamar if they're going to extend them. I would assume they would. But now if you're Lamar, you're like, hey, this guy hasn't played football in a freaking year. I won an MVP. I've been really good, and you're not going to give me the money like this. Joe Burrow's really good. Pittsburgh's in limbo with their QB, but this puts them back on the map, puts them back in it. This raises the ceiling of the team. With Baker, you maybe get to a playoffs. I think Deshaun raises the ceiling of this team to like a championship, like a AFC championship, maybe a Super Bowl berth. And you said last year, why aren't the Browns doing what the Bengals doing? Why couldn't they? Because the quarterback.
Right. Yeah, Baker was holding them back, all the immature stuff. We just talked about it in our previous this podcast.
This podcast.
Yeah, I know, in this podcast. But I just think what kind of fits too is this is not the first time Cleveland has gotten a player like Deshaun Watson in this sense, with all the legal issues. This is a team that picked up Kareem Hunt with all the stuff going on with him, with kicking his girlfriend. The whole Deshaun Watson situation, even though it's dropped, I think there is a possibility out there that he could get suspended for some games. And that, what brings it to me is like, that's alarming. I think that's alarming in a sense where like, I think it's a question mark. I don't know what to believe from Deshaun Watson. I don't know what his character is. Before this, I would say Deshaun Watson was a pretty fucking great stand-up dude, like A+ all around, character-wise. But this does bring a question mark, and it's fucking scary, the fact that Cleveland went all in for a guy in Deshaun Watson in this kind of way. It's one thing to give up draft picks. They're not the first team, and they're not going to be the last team to do this. But as far as the contract goes, fully guaranteed $250 million, it's fucking astronomical money, Max. It is fucking insane. And I feel like that's the biggest all-in move I have seen. Because if he winds up, like if the character doesn't work out, you're fucked. There's no releasing him. There's no getting off the books with him. You are stuck with him for 6 years.
But I mean, that's the position I think they want to be in. I think they're going to hitch their wagon to the guy. I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't think they are. They did. They hitched their wagon to Deshaun.
No.
So they probably know more about the case than we do. And if he has to be suspended 6 games, I think they're okay with that, because if you're a Browns fan or maybe a person in the Browns organization, you just got to think back to Tim Couch, Johnny Manziel, Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon, all those guys. And there hasn't been a team with more quarterback dysfunction the last 25 years than the Browns.
Yeah.
and they saw an opportunity. We all thought Baker was the guy. After 1 year, we're like, damn,
He
Baker's the
was the
best
guy.
quarterback.
I think he
Baker's the
was the guy.
answer.
Yeah.
1 year, Freddie Fat Boy always in the kitchen. We're all like, eh. And then he was good last year. They won a playoff game with Baker. Let's not forget he played well.
Yeah.
This year was a
Played
mixed
well.
bag. I know he had the shoulder.
Yeah.
But I think they're done trying one. They're like, fuck it. We'll give up a little extra if we have to for a guy who hasn't played. We'll give him the guaranteed contract. We're going to establish a culture in Cleveland. They kind of had the culture there. He solidifies it. If he's the good dude like I thought he was. But like I said, we have to wait and see, because even if he didn't do it, he did something to 22 women that put them in the position to form a complaint about you. And I'm not saying anyone's innocent or guilty. I don't know. I wasn't there. Neither were you. But
Right.
it's a red flag when you have 22 women bring up cases against you.
Yeah, and when you're paying a guy that much money, it's crazy because a lot of teams were just simply out on him, just from like they didn't care. They wrote him off their board. And let's talk about the other teams that were involved in this, because I think it's warranted that we have to. On a Carolina standpoint, this is what I heard that was reported, which you can't believe reporting these days, it seems like, because every report that comes out is fucking like false as shit. Carolina didn't want to guarantee the third and the fourth year. That was the reason why he crossed off Carolina.
But if you're a Carolina fan, Juan, can you be mad at the organization for wanting that? Like,
No,
is that request out of the realm of possible? Like, is that a request so ridiculous to make of Deshaun Watson in this current state of his career?
no, not at all. Not at all. And I think a town like Carolina doesn't have as much leeway to bring a guy like that with his history to the team and to the city. I don't think the fans will respond as gracefully as Cleveland would. Like Cleveland, like I said, they brought a guy in Kareem Hunt already. Like it was fine.
Even
No one
Baker
blinked.
one, even though he didn't do anything bad, but just the brashness, he was very disliked. They didn't care. They were like, we're
Yeah.
gonna bring him in here. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just the
It's kind
truth
of,
of it.
I think, yeah, because it is the truth of it, because some teams simply with that kind of history of that, it's an automatic cross off. Like, for instance, I know with the Raiders, guys who have domestic violence history at all, Mark Davis is not going to sign them. He doesn't care how good they are. He's not going to do it. Why? Because he's really good friends with Fred Biletnikoff, the Hall of Famer, wide receiver from the Raiders. His daughter wound up dying from domestic violence, and Mark Davis supports that. So there's just some teams that are just have a no tolerance policy. Some other teams they're open, they're more open than others. I would say like
Yeah.
the Kansas Cities of the world, the Clevelands, the Seattles,
Philadelphia, in a sense. I mean, we
Philly.
took Michael Vick after the
Yeah,
dogfighting stuff. There's always
exactly.
teams, and I guess that would be Kansas
Right.
City now because Andy Reid. There's always teams that will take the baggage for the talent. And when
Yeah.
you're super talented like Deshaun Watson, you'll get more chances than a guy like me who sucks at football, who has baggage. No
Exactly.
one will ever touch me. I don't suck,
Yeah.
but I'm not an NFL player. I'm in no
you
illusion.
you'll be my long
Chico
snapper,
long
Max.
snapper if I ever took it up. But like, do you want to get into some? I think we kind of talked about winners and losers. Do you want to have anyone else you want to add to it real quick?
Oh well, obviously the Atlanta Falcons, they fumbled the bag. Uh, I I felt like they probably didn't go all in for
Do you
Deshaun
think the
Watson.
Matt Ryan just having him there kind of made everything way too complicated?
But yeah, more difficult, with him like, oh, we got to put a stop to your bonus. And I think it's already on the table that he's going to end up leaving. He's probably going to go to Indy, as far as the reports that I heard. Who knows?
Wow.
Like I said, I mean, the reports are fucking false these
I
days.
think a
But
loser
that's
of
what
this
I
trade
heard.
is just any reporter who had a take on this, and just
Right.
even us to a certain extent. For like, you just can't believe any of the shit that comes out of people's mouth. You could reference Kyrie, I want to be in Boston. No, you don't. James Harden, Philadelphia was my number one preference. Okay, the first time you got traded there, you requested a trade from Houston. Where'd you go? Brooklyn.
Right.
So don't fill me
It's
that
getting
line
out
of
of hand.
bullshit.
It's getting out of hand, honestly. Just the false
Well,
reporting
I
going
think
on.
these agents and players and managers and whoever's a part of it and NFL teams are so good at spinning the narrative. So the ones who want to lay in the shadows can, and they just
Right.
leak shit all the time.
Yeah.
It's just bad. And another winner for the trade is just AFC quarterback acquisitions for this offseason. Russ of the Broncos, Deshaun to the
Amari
Browns.
Amari Cooper, he's a winner. He got himself a
Yeah, big
quarterback.
time winner. Nick Chubb, maybe he'll have some
Nick
easier
Chubb,
boxes to deal with.
yeah. And just, I mean, Cleveland Brown fans in general, like you said, the whole not having a quarterback. Besides, the only other organization that I can think of that hasn't had a quarterback is Chicago, and that's why they're dying to have Justin Fields to be the guy. But Cleveland's right there with them. They have never had a guy since what?
Bernie Kosar.
Bernie Kosar, yeah, that was winning playoff games, so that was a long time ago. Um, who else? The Saints. What are your thoughts on the Saints not getting him?
I would have loved to see if Sean Payton hadn't retired, if he would be more willing and open to go there. But maybe just he saw the salary cap and it was just maybe he didn't want to play with can't guard Mike. He didn't know how to throw slants for 50 plays a game. I just don't.
Yeah,
I honestly never felt like the Saints were a true player, just because they didn't really have assets unless they wanted to give up all their first round picks. And even then,
right.
their team's not in an amazing spot. Like I feel like their team's more on the decline than people want to give them credit for, especially offensively.
Yeah. And so this is the last question I want to ask you. If the Deshaun didn't have an option as far as the trade clause, and between Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, and Cleveland, if you, the Texans, had a choice of obviously picking the best package, who would you pick? Because I'm going to tell you who I'll pick. I'm picking the Falcons. I heard they were going to give up AJ Terrell in that package. I would have took that in a
Wow.
heartbeat. Yeah, that's what I heard.
I probably would have went with Carolina because I'm pretty sure they could have got a lot out of David Tepper because he's just so ready for a quarterback to come to
Desperate.
his team.
Yeah.
So that's what I probably would have went with. I didn't think the Browns were ever going to pull the trigger. I thought they were too linked to Baker. And it's not that Baker's good, but when you draft a guy 1 overall one and you're just like, we got to prove that this guy's the guy. And maybe it's a little different because John Dorsey's not there. If John Dorsey was there, they probably would have never done this because he would have said, I picked Baker 1. I know he's the guy and all this bullshit. So that's what I would probably go with Carolina.
Yeah. It's crazy, dude. The NFL is fucking nuts. We'll see. We'll probably do a part 3 for you guys, but we'll kick it back to our old selves in the old podcast and say
Yeah,
bye to
we'll,
you
we'll
guys
be
there.
in our respected dungeons. And Juan, before
Yeah.
we go, I have a quick one. What's
What's
your
up?
favorite trade so far? Russ, Deshaun, or